Eyre is a distinguished diplomatic fellow at the Middle East Institute and a former State Department senior policymaker for the Middle East and North Africa, and joins us from Washington, D.C. Alan, thank you very much for your time. Donald Trump keeps saying he would prefer a deal while also threatening to send more military assets to the region. So it's something of mixed messaging from the White House. Do we know what President Trump actually wants Iran to agree to?
I don't think it's mixed messaging at all. It's two sides of the same coin, Aaron, in the sense that he's threatening with military force and hoping that will increase the odds of a deal. As to what exactly he's seeking, no one knows. The messaging, the U.S. administration messaging, has been inconsistent on this. Sometimes it's been, we want a nuclear deal. And then there's other times where both President Trump and those around him have said we also want to include restrictions on missiles and on proxies. So it's unclear what the negotiators will be focusing on. There has been some indications that they'll try a phased approach. First go for nuclear, and then if that's successful, move on to other topics. But there is a lot of ambiguity.
Indeed. I mean, normally, President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu would be aligned in their thinking on this, but the Israeli Prime Minister is clearly concerned because he brought forward this meeting by a week. Yeah,
there's definitely a disparity in terms of strategic priorities. President Trump, in many ways, would be satisfied with a nuclear deal that was, in his mind at least, better than the JCPOA. Israel, however, sees Iran as an existential threat, and so would not be satisfied with any deal which it would not trust Iran to implement, whether it's a nuclear deal, whether it includes missiles, or whether it even includes proxies. Israel wants the Islamic Republic of Iran either gone or so weak that it cannot threaten Israel in any realistic fashion.
Now, ahead of this meeting, Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian said that Iran will not yield to their excessive demands. But of course, Iran has been significantly weakened in the last year or so. How strong is their bargaining position ahead of the next round of talks?
Well, paradoxically, Aaron, I think they're in many ways too weak to negotiate, in the sense that they have no more strategic deterrence. Israel removed that when they destroyed their nuclear program, took out their missiles, and weakened their proxies. So what Iran is primarily concerned about is keeping the regime as a viable entity. And it feels that if it makes too many concessions, that's a signal of weakness that will invite further aggression from the U.S. and from Israel. So the fact that Iran is weaker than it's ever been shouldn't be interpreted as it being more willing to concede and to give more ground to the U.S., because, in fact, the exact opposite is true.
And Oman was the mediator in the last round of talks. Presumably that will continue. How important is it that there is an Arab presence in these discussions, given the concern there will be in the region of a wider war?
Well, it's always good. I think it's great that all the Arab countries, the Gulf countries, Turkey, are all giving input to President Trump and the administration, and are all trying to be a part of a non-military solution. But to be honest, there shouldn't be mediation in talks between Iran and the United States, because that's an incredibly inefficient, time-consuming, suboptimal way to do negotiations. They should be in the same room talking to each other. That's what we did during the JCPOA nuclear negotiations, which helped us make the progress we made. So I hope everyone is involved peripherally, but the U.S. and Iran need to lock themselves in a room and go at it and talk.
And finally, Alan, do you think there's any chance that President Trump could revert back to something very similar to the deal that was agreed, as you mentioned, that he pulled out of in 2018?
It could well be. I mean, again, unlike the time when we did it, you know, the negotiators are not negotiating over a big comprehensive text with clauses and appendices and so forth and so on. They're going for more conceptual agreement in principle. And I think if President Trump could get an agreement in principle on the issues he cares about, whether that's just nuclear or the whole triad of nuclear, missiles, and proxies, then he would declare victory and move on to another topic. He's shown that he's interested in a quick win. He knows the downside of getting engaged in a destabilizing regional war in the Middle East and wants to avoid that at all costs. So I think if there is any hope, it will be the two sides coming to an agreement, vague and in principle, and then moving on to sort of backfill from there.
Alan, great to get your thoughts. I really appreciate you joining us on the programme. Alan Eyre, their Distinguished Diplomatic Fellow at the Middle East Institute.